I stood there frozen. Right where Grace's grave used to feel like a sacred place, now reduced to nothing but a bare patch of grass. No marker, no name, not even a trace that my little girl ever rested here. Just gone. I dropped the flowers from my hands. They scattered like confetti across the dirt. The silence in that moment was louder than any scream. Jenna, my wife, stepped beside me slowly, gripping Grace's favorite stuffed bunny. Her breath hitched before she could even speak. What happened to the marker? She finally managed, voice trembling. I shook my head. My chest was tight. My hands were clenched. I couldn't believe it either. Just 2 days ago, we were here, placing fresh peonies and adjusting the carved wooden angel we had lovingly designed. Grace's name was engraved into that marker with a quote she picked before cancer took her at just 7 years old. Be kind, even when it's hard. That was the quote. That was her. And now, it was like someone had decided her memory didn't deserve to exist. I pulled out my phone, hands shaking, and called the cemetery office. Maybe they moved it. Maybe there was an accident. Maybe, sir, the clerk replied on speaker, we have no record of removing any marker. But, we did receive a complaint from your HOA yesterday. Jenna gasped beside me. I already knew where this was going, and I knew exactly who made that complaint. Karen, president of the Glenwood Pines Homeowners Association, a woman with a plastic smile and a God complex who believed power came from font sizes in newsletters and threats in the form of HOA violation slips. This can't be real, Jenna whispered, tears welling up in her eyes. She removed our daughter's grave marker? That marker wasn't just wood and paint. It was where Jenna came every week to sit and talk to Grace. It was where I knelt every Sunday with trembling hands and whispered, Daddy's still here. It was where neighbors had once left cards and flowers and drawings. Even Karen's own niece had brought a note one time. But to Karen, it was an unapproved design, an aesthetic violation of neighborhood harmony, a threat to uniformity and suburban perfection. I turned and looked around the cemetery. A few other graves had polished stones. Some even had small wind chimes or flower baskets. But only ours was gone. I clenched my fists as the wind picked up, brushing through the trees like Grace's voice whispering in my ear, Don't let her win, Daddy. I could hear Jenna sobbing now, that deep, painful cry you only make when someone rips away your last connection to someone you've already lost. That's when I made a decision. This wasn't going to end quietly. This wasn't going to end in a town hall meeting or with a slap on the wrist. This was war. You don't mess with a grieving father's peace. You don't erase a child's memory for the sake of regulations. And you sure as hell don't cross the line with my family, not twice. Because this time, Karen, you picked the wrong grave to desecrate. It all started 3 years ago when we moved into Glenwood Pines. On paper, it was the dream neighborhood. Tree-lined streets, white picket fences, perfect lawns. The kind of place where neighbors waved, kids played in driveways, and everyone knew each other's dog's name. For us, it was more than just a move, it was a restart. Grace had just finished her 3rd round of chemotherapy. The city hospital was over an hour away from our old home, and between traffic noise and our collapsing apartment ceiling, we needed a place that felt safe, stable, quiet, somewhere Grace could breathe without hearing sirens. When we found the little 2-story craftsman with the rose bushes out front, Jenna looked at me with tears in her eyes. This is it, she whispered. And it was. Grace loved the attic bedroom with the sloped ceiling. She called it her Princess Tower. We painted the walls light purple and let her stick glow-in-the-dark stars all over the ceiling. Every night, she'd lie there, staring up at the stars, whispering little secrets to them like they were her personal sky. She was 6, bright, gentle, curious. She didn't complain about the nausea, didn't cry when her hair fell out. She just smiled and said, Daddy, I'll be okay. I have stars in my room now. Jenna and I were doing our best. I worked remotely, and she left her nursing job to care for Grace full-time. We lived on one income, tight budgeting, and quiet hope. Then came the first letter. a polite reminder from the HOA that our mailbox was 1.5 inches taller than regulation. I didn't think much of it. Maybe they were just thorough. Then came another about our nonconforming wind chimes. They were graces, shaped like tiny butterflies. Then the real storm arrived. Karen. She first introduced herself while Jenna was pruning the front hedges. "Hello there. I'm Karen Delacroix, HOA president," she announced with the confidence of a dictator greeting a new subject. Jenna politely smiled. "Nice to meet you." Karen's smile didn't quite reach her eyes. "I noticed your garden gnome," she said, gesturing at a tiny ceramic figure Grace had placed by the flower bed. "Unfortunately, Section 3B prohibits decorative items not pre-approved by the committee." Jenna blinked. It's just a gnome." Karen gave a tight-lipped smile. "Regulations are regulations, dear. We maintain community standards." That was Karen in a nutshell, wrapped in pearls and passive aggression. Her idea of peace was conformity. Her version of compassion was measured in cubic inches and color-coded flower pots. Still, we complied. Removed the gnome, trimmed the hedges, repainted the fence after she complained about the tone inconsistency. We didn't want trouble. We just wanted Grace to live somewhere nice. Safe. But Grace, she didn't see it the way we did. "She's mean." Grace whispered one night, curled into my side. "Who is baby?" "The fancy lady. The one who stares." Jenna overheard and sat beside us. "Don't worry, honey. Some people just don't know how to smile with their heart." That made Grace giggle. Over time, Grace's condition started to shift. She had good days, bad days, some days filled with laughter in the backyard, others where she barely had the strength to sit up. Still, she was always kind. She'd write little cards to our neighbors, draw flowers on them, and leave them at their doorsteps. Even Karen got one, a pink card with a hand-drawn sun that said, "Have a happy heart." Karen never responded, but I saw her tear the card in half and toss it in the trash. I didn't tell Grace. Then the worst came, a sudden infection. Her immune system couldn't fight. Within days, she was in ICU. And a week later, she was gone. 7 years old. There are no words for that kind of pain. We buried her in the small local cemetery just outside town. Grace had once said she liked that place. "It has butterflies and bluebells." We couldn't afford an elaborate headstone, but Jenna and I wanted something personal. So I crafted a wooden grave marker by hand, sanded it, stained it, carved it with care. Jenna painted Grace's name in soft lilac, added tiny golden stars, and beneath it, the quote Grace had chosen months ago, "Be kind, even when it's hard." We placed it by her resting place with flowers and the same stuffed bunny Grace once clutched in her hospital bed. Neighbors came. Some cried. Some brought cards. Even Mr. Johnson, the war veteran next door, knelt at her grave and left a tiny American flag beside it. But Karen? She didn't show up. Not to the funeral. Not to say sorry. Not even to nod from afar. We thought maybe, just maybe, she'd finally leave us alone. Until the letters started again. "This grave marker has not been pre-approved by the HOA. This design does not conform to cemetery aesthetics under HOA guidelines. This may set a precedent." A precedent, like honoring our dead child, was a threat to her suburban empire. We ignored her. And then one day, the marker was gone. Vanished. Grace's name, her memory, erased like it never mattered. That's when we knew. This wasn't about rules. This was about control. This was about Karen. And it was time to fight back. The thing about people like Karen is they don't attack with weapons. They attack with paperwork. It began subtly. First, she sent a formal notice about unauthorized outdoor toys left in the front yard. She was referring to a pink plastic watering can and a foam butterfly net Grace had left near the bushes. Jenna laughed when she saw the letter. "Is she serious?" "She's always serious," I muttered. "Deadly." We brushed it off. After all, we were dealing with something far more important, Grace's fourth scan. We'd been dreading it for weeks. There was a quiet desperation in everything we did, packing her snacks, brushing her hair, reading her favorite fairy tales before appointments like we were warding off monsters. That morning, Jenna sat silently in the passenger seat, her hand gripping Grace's backpack strap like a lifeline. Grace was in the back seat humming. "Maybe we'll get ice cream today, if I'm brave enough," she whispered. "You're always brave," I told her, glancing at her through the mirror. She smiled, and I swear it was enough light to carry us through the rest of the day. The results weren't great. The tumor had shrunk, but not enough. The doctor adjusted her meds, said we'd try another cycle. Grace somehow smiled through it. She said, "It's okay. I still have my stars." That night, Jenna and I cried silently in bed while Grace lay sleeping with her stuffed bunny and a galaxy of glowing stars above her. But Karen didn't know. Karen didn't care. To her, our daughter was a file, a disruption, a family whose mailbox shade didn't match community standards. A few days later, we came home from the hospital to find a bright yellow violation tag pinned to our front door. Violation: excessive noise during quiet hours time logged, 7:12 p.m. details, sound of wind chimes and children's music heard from front porch. I looked at Jenna. "We weren't even home," she whispered. Karen didn't stop there. She reported us for failing to edge the lawn within HOA seasonal schedule. She complained about Grace's sidewalk chalk drawings, calling them graffiti. She even emailed a complaint about the visually disruptive butterfly stickers on Grace's bedroom window. I confronted her once, right outside the mailbox station. Grace was with me, holding my hand. "Karen, this is getting ridiculous. We're dealing with..." She cut me off, adjusting her sunglasses. "Rules are rules, Michael," she said with that same forced smile. "If I'd bend them for you, I'd have to bend them for everyone." I stared at her in disbelief. "It's sidewalk chalk. It washes off in the rain." She stepped closer, lowering her voice. "And the wind chimes? The toys? The gnome? All violations. You're not above the standards just because, well, you have a sob story." That word, sob story, landed like a slap across my chest. Grace squeezed my hand tighter. I leaned in. "She's 6 and fighting cancer. You have no soul." Karen turned away without a word. She knew what she was doing. She always did. The next few months blurred together. Between treatments, emergency visits, good days and dark days. But Grace still managed to make everyone around her smile. She wrote little notes for Jenna every day. One said, "Mommy, you make the sun shine even when I'm tired." She made me a tiny clay heart that said #OneDad and made me promise to keep it in my wallet forever. Even as her hair fell out again, even as her cheeks grew paler, she still said please and thank you. Still whispered, "I love you" before sleeping. Then, one cold October morning, Grace collapsed. Jenna screamed. I called 911. She was rushed to the ER. They tried everything. But in the end, there was nothing left to try. She was gone. Our world broke in half. Planning her funeral was a kind of pain I never imagined. We debated whether to bury her with her bunny or the clay heart. Jenna made a scrapbook of her art to place inside the casket. And I built the grave marker. Not because I couldn't afford a proper stone, but because I needed to do something. To make something for my baby girl that came from my hands. From my heart. I carved her name, Grace Delaney, loved beyond the stars. I painted it with the same purple she loved on her bedroom walls. Jenna added the stars, the gold ones that matched her ceiling. It wasn't flashy. It wasn't offensive. It was ours. Neighbors came to the service. People who never even met Grace cried with us. Even Mr. Johnson, tough as nails, wiped a tear and hugged Jenna like she was his own daughter. But Karen? Not a word. Not a flower. Not a second of silence. Instead, the next week, we received another letter. Your current grave marker design has not been submitted for approval. Please submit Form C-28 for visual memorials outside standard dimensions. Unapproved items are subject to removal. I read it aloud. Jenna just stared. I'm going to bury her twice, she whispered, eyes empty, because that's what this feels like. I crumpled the letter and threw it across the kitchen. For the first time in months, I wanted to scream. This is harassment. I said, this is war. We ignored the letter. We refused to ask permission to mourn our child. But Karen didn't back down. A week later, another letter. Then a certified mail notice. Then a final warning. We filed a complaint with the HOA board. It went nowhere. Karen controlled them, intimidated them, silenced them. And then 2 weeks later, we came to visit Grace and the marker was gone. Just like that. Like her name never existed. The cemetery worker met us halfway down the path, her steps hesitant, her clipboard shaking slightly. You must be Mr. and Mrs. Delaney, she said softly. I could barely answer. I was still trying to make sense of what I was seeing, or rather, what I wasn't seeing. The wooden marker I built with my bare hands. The marker Grace helped me design while she was still alive. Gone. Vanished without a trace. We didn't authorize any removal, she continued quickly, trying to calm our rising panic. We received a notice from your homeowners association last week. Said it didn't meet their design criteria. But we didn't think they'd take action without speaking to the family. Jenna dropped to her knees beside the empty patch of grass, sobbing into the bunny doll she always brought with her. She clutched it like it was Grace herself. What do you mean they took action? I demanded. They came here? To a cemetery? The worker hesitated. They had a private contractor. Claimed it was approved. We didn't question it. We're so sorry. Sorry didn't put our daughter's memory back. I looked around. Other graves had custom touches, ceramic angels, windmills, painted stones. One family even had solar lights lining the edge. No one touched those, but ours, Grace's, was targeted. Because of Karen. That night, the silence in our home was unbearable. No wind chimes. No Grace. No laughter from a room. Just the echo of loss bouncing through every hallway. Jenna sat at the kitchen table, staring at the old family photo. Grace was in the middle, holding a lollipop, eyes sparkling. She took her away again, Jenna whispered. First her joy, now her memory. I was pacing, fuming, my fists clenched, phone shaking in my hand. I called Karen, straight to voicemail. I called again, and again. Nothing. Finally, I left a message. You crossed a line, Karen. A line you don't come back from. That was our child's grave. You think you can hide behind forms and bylaws? You think this is over? It's not. Then I hung up and threw the phone across the room. The next day, I filed a police report for destruction of private property. The officer at the desk raised an eyebrow when I explained, Wait, the HOA removed your daughter's grave marker? Yes, I said through gritted teeth. Do you have proof? They left a letter. I've got witnesses. The cemetery never approved it. He sighed. It's a gray area. That's not public land. If they contracted someone and claimed you were in violation, I never signed any agreement that lets Karen desecrate a grave. He leaned back in his chair. We'll open a file, but don't expect much. These cases, they don't go far. That was the first slap of injustice. The system didn't care. Not about Grace. Not about us. Not about right or wrong. They saw it as a neighborhood dispute, paperwork versus pain. That night, I posted everything on Facebook. The photos, the letter, the bare grave, a long post detailing how our HOA president removed our daughter's grave marker without consent. The post went viral in less than 48 hours. Thousands of comments. Local news picked it up. Reporters emailed us. One even came to the house the next morning. Jenna didn't want to speak. She couldn't stop crying. So I spoke. This isn't just about a marker, I told the camera. It's about humanity. It's about people like Karen who hide behind technicalities to hurt others. My daughter died of cancer. She never hurt anyone. And now they've tried to erase her. The story aired that night. By the next morning, we weren't the only ones angry. Mr. Johnson came by with coffee and tears in his eyes. That little girl waved at me every morning. He said, This ain't right. He wasn't alone. A group of neighbors started an online petition to remove Karen from her position. Others placed paper stars on their own mailboxes in honor of Grace. Some came to the cemetery and left flowers beside the now bare patch. We weren't alone anymore. But Karen wasn't done. She issued a public statement. While we sympathize with the Delaney family's loss, community standards are in place for a reason. The HOA had no choice but to act in accordance with our charter, which all residents agreed to upon purchase of their homes. We regret the emotional distress this may have caused. Had no choice. No, she had every choice. The final blow came 3 days later. A legal letter from Karen's private attorney. Cease and desist, it said. They demanded we remove our social media posts or face defamation proceedings. Jenna nearly collapsed when she saw it. I can't take this anymore, she whispered. We lost our daughter. Why won't she leave us alone? I took the letter and set it on fire in the sink. No more hiding. No more begging. She wanted a fight? She got one. We hired a lawyer. A real one. Pro bono at first, then backed by a civil rights nonprofit that saw the story online. They believed we had a case, not just property destruction, but emotional damages, discrimination against a grieving family, abuse of power. We filed a suit. Karen laughed it off at first, until the subpoenas arrived, until the news trucks parked outside her house, until neighbors stopped waving at her, until the HOA board held an emergency meeting. And for the first time since we moved in, Karen was losing control. For weeks, our home stopped feeling like a home. It became a war room. Legal papers covered the kitchen table. Jenna barely slept. When she did, she curled into a fetal position on Grace's bed, clutching the bunny like a grieving soldier holding a fallen comrade's dog tag. I spent my nights pacing, writing statements, watching the news reports. The story had taken on a life of its own. CNN mentioned it. Local media debated HOA power abuse. Advocacy groups picked sides. But Karen? She stayed silent. Her shutters were always drawn. Her porch light off. Only her car moved, like she was trying to vanish into the cracks of her own empire. Until, one morning, she rang our doorbell. I opened it slowly. Jenna stood behind me, barefoot, eyes red and wide. Karen looked tired. Older. Makeup less for the first time. She clutched a clipboard in one hand and a manila folder in the other. I came to talk, she said, voice flat. No cameras, I warned. No tricks. She nodded. We stood awkwardly on the porch as wind rustled the hanging plants Jenna had been too numb to water for days. I didn't mean for it to go this far, Karen said. I was just doing my job. The board, the rules. Don't you dare say rules, Jenna hissed, stepping forward. Her voice cracked like lightning in a storm. That was my daughter's grave. She's dead. She's gone. And you erased her memory like it was a garden ornament. Karen looked away. For the first time, I saw something behind her eyes, shame, guilt, or just discomfort at being challenged. She had a quote. Jenna continued, tears brimming. She picked it before she passed. Do you know what it said? Karen didn't answer. Be kind, even when it's hard. That's what you destroyed. Karen's hands trembled slightly. I didn't remove it myself. I signed off on it, but the contractor, I stepped forward. Enough. You crossed the line, Karen. And now you're going to pay for it. She handed me the folder. This is a formal request to end the lawsuit. The board wants peace. We're offering a written apology, reimbursement for damages, and your marker back. We found it in the maintenance shed. Broken. I asked. Karen hesitated. Damaged, but reparable. Jenna turned and walked away. She couldn't listen anymore. I stared at Karen. You're lucky this didn't happen in another town. You'd be in court for vandalizing sacred ground. I know, she whispered. I just wanted order. Not this. She turned and walked down the steps. But it was too late for apologies. That night, Jenna sat in the cemetery with the broken marker across her lap. She didn't speak, just ran her fingers over the carved name, now chipped, the purple paint scratched. I knelt beside her. We'll fix it, I said softly. We'll build her a new one. Bigger. Stronger. Jenna looked at me through glassy eyes. What if we never feel peace again? I didn't have an answer. Only silence. Then she asked me something that shattered my soul. Do you ever feel like we're failing her, even after she's gone? I pulled her into my arms and held her while she wept into my chest. The sun had set behind the trees. Streetlights flickered to life. The breeze carried the scent of fresh grass. And then we heard footsteps, a shadow moving near the edge of the cemetery. Familiar, rigid posture, arms crossed. Karen. She stood across the field, just staring at us. For a long moment, no one moved. Then she did something I never expected. She placed a single paper star on the empty grave beside ours. Then she walked away. The next morning, someone vandalized her house. Spray-painted words across the garage door. Grave, robber, monster. No soul. It wasn't us. But part of me understood the anger. The HOA held a vote 3 days later. Karen was removed as president. The motion passed 82-4. She moved out 2 weeks later. No goodbye, no redemption arc. Just a moving truck, a slamming door, and silence. But that's not the end. Grace's new marker was installed on her birthday. A polished stone this time. Still purple. Still stars. Still bearing her quote. The whole neighborhood came to the unveiling. People brought candles, cards. Even the mayor sent a letter of apology. Jenna stood beside me, stronger now. We did it, she whispered. She'll never be erased again. I looked at the crowd. No one said the word rules. Only one word echoed that day. Grace. Her name. Her memory. Her legacy. Not even a tyrant in pearls could take that away. They say you can't fight City Hall. But we weren't fighting City Hall. We were fighting a woman with a clipboard and a broken compass where her heart should have been. And in the end, we won. 3 weeks after Karen moved out, we received the court ruling. The judge's words still echo in my mind. The HOA overstepped its jurisdiction. The unauthorized removal of a minor child's grave marker without due process or consent from the family constitutes both property damage and emotional distress under state statute. This case is not about regulations. It's about the human cost of enforcing them without compassion. Karen was fined $25,000 in damages. The HOA was ordered to revise its bylaws to explicitly prohibit interference with burial memorials. They had to issue a public apology, printed in the city paper, and mailed to every resident of Glenwood Pines. But none of that money brought Grace back. None of it erased the pain. Still, it mattered. Not just for us, but for every other family who'd ever been bullied by an HOA into silence. The day after the ruling, Jenna and I stood before the full HOA board at the quarterly community meeting. I wasn't nervous. I wasn't angry anymore. I was calm. Because justice, real justice, had finally caught up to power. I stood at the podium, hands steady. Let me be clear, I said. We didn't ask for revenge. We asked for respect. I looked out at the rows of neighbors, many of them nodding, teary-eyed. My daughter wasn't a violation. She was a human being, and her memory deserves more protection than a hedge height regulation. The board applauded. Some residents stood. Jenna said nothing that night. She didn't have to. The community had finally heard her grief and stood beside it. A week later, something extraordinary happened. A small plaque appeared at the entrance of the neighborhood. It read, "In memory of Grace Delaney, 2014 to 2021, be kind even when it's hard. This community remembers." The HOA didn't commission it. The neighbors did. And for the first time since we moved to Glenwood Pines, it felt like home. As for Karen, last I heard, she'd moved 3 towns over. Word got around. The story followed her. No HOA would elect her again. No board would trust her. Her perfect record of control was permanently stained with compassion's ink. She didn't go to jail. She didn't face public humiliation. But she lost what she valued most, her influence. And in the quiet corridors of her new life, I hope she finally understood what she destroyed. Jenna started working again, part-time at the pediatric unit where Grace once received treatment. She said, "If I can help one mother feel less alone, it's worth it." I took Grace's clay heart and had it cast into bronze. It hangs in my office now, right above my desk. Every time I feel overwhelmed, I look at it, and I remember who I'm fighting for. Grace's grave now sits under a flowering tree. It's the most visited plot in that cemetery. People leave stars, drawings, and little chalk notes on the path. Be kind, one read, because Grace was. Another simply said, we remember. 6 months later, the neighborhood looked different. Not because of new paint or manicured lawns, those things stayed the same, but something far deeper had changed. Kindness had taken root. The HOA now began each meeting with a compassion clause, a policy Jenna and I helped draft, focused on human dignity before policy enforcement. It was passed unanimously. Karen's name was never mentioned, but her shadow lingered like a quiet warning. No more letters about wind chimes or chalk drawings. No more cold inspections. No more threats hidden in legal jargon. Instead, people started checking on one another. One neighbor built a little free library in Grace's honor, filled with children's books and notes that said, "Take one, leave kindness." Another organized a memorial garden in the community park where families could place small symbols of lost loved ones. Jenna visited it often. She'd sit on the bench beneath the plaque with Grace's name and quietly read stories to children who never even met our daughter. I feel like she's still helping people, she whispered to me one day. And she was. Our home changed, too. Not all at once. The empty bedroom stayed untouched for months. The stars still glowed on the ceiling, gently reminding us of what once was. But slowly healing crept in. Jenna painted again, soft watercolors with stars and butterflies. I built a tree house in the backyard. Not because Grace could use it anymore, but because I knew she'd want other kids to. One morning, we woke to find a child sitting up there quietly reading. When I asked how she got in, she smiled and said, "The stars told me I could." We didn't ask questions. We just brought her cocoa. Sometimes I wonder if Karen ever truly understood what she did. If she regrets it. But maybe that doesn't matter anymore. Because what she tried to erase, what she thought she could reduce to a violation, became the very heart of this community. Grace became more than a name on a stone. She became a symbol of innocence, of quiet strength, of kindness, especially when it's hard. Last week, I received a letter from a father in another state. He'd read our story. His own HOA had been threatening him over a bench he built for his late wife under a tree in their shared garden. He wrote, "I was about to give in. Then I saw your post. I fought back, not just for her, but for others who'll come after me. Thank you. Thank Grace." That's when I knew. This wasn't just our battle. It was a stand for something greater. We visit Grace's grave every Sunday. There's a polished plaque now. Soft lavender stone. Golden stars. Beneath it, her words etched forever. Be kind, even when it's hard. Around her grave bloom wildflowers that no one dares trim. Even the cemetery staff said, "We leave them for her." Sometimes strangers come and sit for a while. No words, just quiet reflection. And sometimes that's enough. Because in a world of rules and walls and fences, a little girl, with a smile brighter than the stars, taught us what truly matters. Not uniformity, not control, not silence, but love, memory, and above all, kindness. Sometimes I still wake up expecting to hear her footsteps, the soft patter of Grace running down the hallway in the early morning, dragging her blanket behind her, whispering, "Daddy, the stars are still glowing." And for a second, I forget. I forget the hospital. I forget the silence. I forget the empty space where a little girl's laugh used to live. But then reality settles in, like morning fog that never quite lifts. And I remember. But here's what else I remember. I remember a girl who, even when fighting the worst kind of illness, handed out drawings to neighbors she barely knew. A girl who reminded us to be kind, even when it's hard. A girl who never broke, even when her body did. Grace taught us how to love harder, how to fight without losing your humanity, and how to turn grief into something greater than pain. To anyone watching this, I need you to understand something. This isn't just a story about an HOA president who crossed a line. It's not about laws, bylaws, or bureaucratic madness. It's about what happens when we forget to treat each other like human beings. We live in a world obsessed with rules, with control, with fitting things into boxes, neat, labeled, regulated boxes. But love doesn't fit in a box. Grief doesn't follow protocol. And kindness doesn't require permission. If you've ever lost someone, and I mean really lost someone, you know how sacred the smallest things become. A photograph, a toy, a name carved in wood. That marker wasn't just decoration. It was a piece of our daughter, a piece of our healing. To take that away was to dig up a wound and throw salt into it. But here's the thing about people like Karen. They think power lies in paperwork. They believe silence means surrender. But they're wrong. Because we didn't stay silent, and we didn't surrender. We fought back, with words, with community, with truth, and in the end, kindness won. So, if you've made it this far into our story, I'm asking you to carry this message forward. Speak up, stand up. Don't let policy be a mask for cruelty. Don't let grief be buried in red tape. And if someone tries to silence your love, your loss, your truth, raise your voice higher. Because you never know who's listening, and you never know whose heart you might change. My name is Michael Delaney. I'm just a dad, a husband, a guy who built a wooden grave marker with shaking hands and a broken heart. And now, I'm a storyteller, because grace deserves to be remembered, and I'll spend the rest of my life making sure she is. For grace, for every child, for every family who's ever been told their grief is too loud. If this story touched you, even for a moment, please don't forget to like the video, subscribe to our channel. HOA denied access. Share this with someone who's ever felt powerless and comment below for grace.